I'm Lance Lambert. Thanks for tuning in to the Vintage Vehicle Show. We are in Irwindale, California at the West Coast All AMC Car Show. This is a gathering of a lot of Ramblers, Nashes, AMCs, all kinds of great cars. You're going to get a chance to see these cars, meet some of the owners, and as usual, hear some great music. So do what I tell you to do every week. Just kick back, relax, and enjoy the show. Upon our arrival here today, I saw an absolutely beautiful car, an AMX3. I've only seen it in magazines. I've never seen it up close and personal. Well, I am right now. And the gentleman standing next to me, Mr. Jeff Teague, is the owner of this car, or the curator of it at the current time. And I understand some guy named Richard Teague was your dad.
Yeah, that was my dad. He is actually the chief designer for American Motors Corporation. He and his team of tremendous designers with Bob Nixon and Vince Geraci and Chuck Mashigan were actually the guys that came up with the design for the AMX3. My dad was kind of like we call the band leader. You know, that no one man designs a car solely by himself. It really does take a team of people, and he had a great team of designers that were working with him. And I was a kid. I was just, I think 7 or 8 years old when this car was in the clay modeling stage, and he used to take me down to Plymouth Road on Saturday mornings and ask me, what do you think? What do you think, sport? And I'll never forget those words. And I didn't know what I was looking at. I was looking at a big, giant jump of, bunch of clay. At the time, I had no idea where they were going with the program. I knew that they were working at the AMXs and the Javelins, and this car here was one that they really wanted to put into production and compete with the Pantura. And
when was pen put to paper on this, and when was this actual car done?
Well, actually, my dad did a lot of travels back and forth to Europe, and actually he did a lot of drawing on the back of the puke bags that they have. That he used to sit there, pull out a ballpoint pen and start sketching, and he did some initial sketches of this car. I think coming back on a Northwest Orient flight, and he drew just a ballpoint pen sketch of this thing, and I think, God, it had been like 1968 or 69, somewhere around in that period.
So do you think any of the other manufacturers were designing their cars on puke bags?
No, not necessarily. I think it was. I think any designer, if he can find if it's a cocktail napkin to a puke bag or the back of somebody's forehead, if they got a pen, they'll draw on it.
So this particular car, this wasn't the end product. I mean, this was a running vehicle at one time, and okay, and okay.
When they were going into production with these cars, they were American Motors at one point was really serious about getting these cars into production. And as a matter of fact, they were getting into building the transmissions, and they had all of the rear ends all done for them. The bodies were being done and built for them. And AMC had suffered through a couple of union strikes at the time. They were one of the union targets back in the early 70s, and consequently almost put the company under then. But this car itself had been one of the 5 prototypes. They make several prototypes before you actually build a car, and this happened to have been the one that was shown by the Coliseum, been photographed the most, and actually it's the most complete out of the 5 factory cars that were built by American Motors, by Bizzarini, that this was the one that was going to be designed, that was going to go into production, the production stage. So it was the most complete, and that meaning with like the louvers and all the things that the complete design package on it. The other 4 cars, there's one that was in a museum in Michigan. We all pretty much know where the cars are at today. There's 3 of them that I know that are really good shape, and this is number 3. There's number 4 and number 5. The number 5 car, my dad had owned that one also, and he had restored both of them. He bought the cars from AMC through Jerry Myers, and decided to get them in because it was a piece of American history. He wanted to put them back and put them in a running order again. And this happens to be the one that was his favorite. It was the number 3 car. It was his absolute favorite. So he kept this one.
Well, Jeff, thank you very much for being on the Vintage Vehicle Show. David and Katie Chick, this is an absolutely gorgeous AMX, one of the prettiest ones here. How did this come into your ownership?
Thank you. We bought it in about 2000, year 2000, and it was a painted roller. It was all apart. So we put it together. It took us 8 months to put it together. So we took it to our first show at the end of the summer, and I think we got third place with it. Mm-hmm. And then I drove it to work for a year and a half, and then over the time we kept doing little things here and there, but mostly it's been that way since about 2001.
So has it been a lot of writing a check out for the work, or have you been out there on your back in the garage on cool winter nights working, turning a wrench here and there?
Well, we bought it in February, and it rained that month, the whole month. I got it home, put it on jack stands, and put a tarp over it until it stopped raining. But then first thing we had to do was find brakes for it. The brakes were shot, so we sourced brakes from junkyard cars and pieces, put it together. The engine was rebuilt, supposedly the tranny was, so that was just put that stuff in. We built some of the interior, the headliner, some of the door panels and things like that. Katie and I put together.
Well, Katie, have you been a fan of AMCs or AMXs in particular, or was this just a car that the timing was right and it was the car you wanted?
Timing was right, and he chose this one and added it to our collection of other cars.
You mentioned the interior. One of the most interesting things about AMXs is that this particular, for 3 years or so, they didn't have a back seat in them. What do you think the decision was at AMC to not put a back seat in them?
I think they were going after Corvette a bit. 2-seat sports car, American sports car.
Performance-wise on AMXs, these are hot cars, right?
Yes, these run pretty good.
Do you get challenged every once in a while by the Corvette boys or the Mustang boys or the Camaro or Firebird or whoever?
Oh, yes. You do a lot.
There's a story here?
There's a lot of racing off the line at lights with different cars, yes.
Is your insurance agent watching, I wonder?
I hope not. I hope not.
I've long felt that if these had a Chevrolet badge on the front or any other badge on the front, if this body style had been put out by one of the big 3 in the past, they would be worth 5 times what they are now, and they would have sold, a jillion of them. And just because they they were still working on that AMC or Rambler or whatever grandma's car problem, they weren't getting the respect that they should have.
Yeah, I agree with that. There probably would have been a lot more of them too.
The AMX scene or the Rambler Nash, seen as far as clubs and activities and car shows. What have you observed in the last few years as far as the growth in those, and any advice to somebody that's thinking about joining a club or joining that community?
Yeah, I would advise to join, but we started this up just by a group site on Yahoo, and it's grown to, there's 66 members on that site. Of course, there's a lot more around the country that click in and out, but we have people from Nevada and from Northern California here.
Well, thank you very much for sharing with us on your AMX. It's a beautiful car, and thanks for being on the Vintage Vehicle Show.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Dennis Allen, I'm walking around the car show here, and this car strikes me as just a blend of stock and a little updating, just absolute gorgeous car. Tell us about your 1970 AMC Javelin.
Well, it was originally sold by my father's dealership in Inglewood, California. Back in the day, he had an AMC dealership, and he sold it to a friend of mine's father. And he kept the car, just used it for transportation. Then somewhere along the line, he gave it to his son. And I pretty much maintained the car and built an engine for him, just made it a little bit better for him. And he drove the car, had some fun with it, and moved up to Desert Hot Springs. And one day he called me up and asked me if I knew anybody that wanted to buy this Javelin. He was getting into motorcycles and wanted to do something different. So I told him, yeah, I was interested in it. I knew the car inside and out. And so I drove up there and picked it up on the trailer and brought it back home.
And the condition at that time was?
Condition at that time, it was a pretty good solid car. It was painted blue at the time. Original color was green. It had been repainted blue, but they had prepped the car with a DA sander, which rippled the sides of it pretty badly. And so I took it to the body shop, who stripped it down to bare metal and turned it into a nice straight car.
One of the things that's neat about owning an AMC is how much people seem to appreciate them. My own personal experience is people kind of like to, talk about grandma's cars or whatever, but they really, I think a lot of people nowadays especially, really do appreciate AMCs. What kind of response do you get from people at various car shows?
Well, I get a lot of people coming up and saying, what kind of car is this? The first cruise night we took this to, we had a couple of kids ride up on bicycles and look at the car for a little while. And the one kid walks over to the door and looks inside and looks up at his buddy and said, yeah, it's a Camaro. And so it's kind of neat to see people's reactions to the car because they've never seen one before, or they'll come up and they'll tell me a story about their mom or grandmother or something having an AMC car. And it's kind of neat to fix up a car like this because it is different. You don't see them at cruise nights. You don't see them at car shows very often. We're lucky to see one, maybe two, if I take it to a car show. But they're few and far between, and that's what kind of makes it neat, I think.
401, it says on the side. I'm familiar of when they went up to 390s, but when did they become 401s?
They changed the 390 over to a 401 in 1971, and they used it in the Javelin and some of the larger AMC cars.
Was the performance on those motors, was the increase really obvious from the 390 to 401?
I wouldn't say it was really obvious. I mean, it was a little bit more torquey of an engine.
I noticed that you have had the honor of being the cover car on Street Thunder magazine. How did that come about?
Well, the editor of Street Thunder, we had talked about my Javelin when I was putting it together, and we talked one day, and he said that he'd like to get it inside his magazine, in the Street Thunder magazine, and so he said he was going to have a photographer get a hold of me and get some pictures taken of it. And the front cover was really a surprise to me when it came out because he didn't tell me about that. It was just, it came out and I saw it on the website and my jaw dropped.
Well, another thing will make your jaw drop, the Vintage Vehicle Show is broadcast in 67 stations across the country right now, also in Finland and Russia, so maybe some Finlandians or some Russians out there will see your car. Dennis Allen, thank you very much for being on the Vintage Vehicle Show, and beautiful car.
Thank you for having me.
You betcha.
Appreciate it.
Jack Botter, you're going to clear up a question for the viewers. There were AMXs and there were Javelins, and then there were AMX Javelins, and help us out on that. Tell us about your 1973 AMC AMX and how it relates to all the other years.
Okay, the 68, 69, and 70 Javelin, or Javelins, were a separate model from the 68, 69, 70 AMXs. The AMXs were a short two-seat car, back in those days. 71, 2, 3, and 4, they made the AMX into a performance and trim option on the Javelin. In 71, 2, 3, and 4, there were a total production about 12,000 of the AMXs on the Javelin chassis.
All the various years of the AMXs and the Javelins and the combination of the two, was it just a difference in body style and the running gear was actually the same?
All the running gear is exactly the same. In fact, the running gear in a Gremlin, and the running gear in a Hornet, and the running gear in a Matador, and the running gear in an Ambassador, they're all the same. You could buy a Javelin with a 6-cylinder engine in it, which would have been in the same engine as in the Gremlin. You buy the 401 cubic inch Javelin AMX engine, you buy the same 401 cubic inch engine in a Ambassador.
Wow. The weight difference must be a little bit difference between the Javelin and the AMX, the smaller AMX.
The smaller AMXs popped in at about, I think, 2,750, something like that. These Javelins pop in at about 2,900 pounds. Mm-hmm. They're very, very light, a lot lighter than any other vehicle that was around at the time.
So you mentioned that you're the original owner on this. You ordered it.
I ordered this car. I went to Wentworth and Irwin AMC dealership in Portland, Oregon. I knew exactly what I wanted. I peeled off 5 $100 bills and I ordered the car. A couple of the special order options on the car, besides the AMX option and the Pierre Cardin designer interior, I ordered it with no air conditioning and no power steering.
For power purposes?
I wanted one thing and one thing only, and that was muscle. Any belt that drives off the engine decreases horsepower to the rear wheels, so all I wanted was muscle. I got 3 letters from the factory to confirm the order. They were bound and determined with 401 cubic inches under the hood. I should have to have power steering. I was bound and determined I would not. I won. So I've got basically the only 401 cubic inch Javelin ever produced with no power steering.
And the Pierre Cardin interior, I remember when that happened, that everybody just kind of went, what? What's going on here?
The 1973 and 1974 Javelins were allowed to have the Pierre Cardin designer interior. There were a total of 4,000 of them produced for all of the Javelin production, which included Javelin AMXs. Given the production numbers of the AMX versus the Javelin, there were probably maybe only 200 AMXs produced with the Pierre Cardin interior. When you ordered the Pierre Cardin interior, you were restricted to a white exterior, black exterior, red exterior, or plum exterior. I hate black with a mad passion. I hate white with a mad passion. They're impossible to keep clean. The plum was really a cool color, but I thought I could get tired of it after a while. So what better color for a sports car than red?
Yeah. You can't go wrong with red. You can't go wrong with this car. So thank you very much for being on the Vintage Vehicle Show. This is a very special car.
I enjoy this car tremendously at all the different car shows. It catches eyes on the freeway. People are always backing up and giving me a big thumbs up.
Okay, well, thumbs up to you.
Thanks a bunch.
David Sprague, I am very partial to Rambler Americans. I'm partial to convertibles. You have the combination of two worlds here, the best of two worlds. Tell us about your 1965 Rambler American.
Well, it's kind of a funny story how I ended up with it 13 years ago. I was actually looking for a Corvair convertible, and I was finding junk for $1,000 or cherried out $10,000 cars, and I found this one for $2,000. It was all there, and it was, you know, fun. I'm like, yeah, Rambler, why not? And then kind of accidentally restored it over the last 13 years. You know, just once you start, you go, oh, well, I need that. Oh, that would look better if I might as well get it painted. Well, now I have to do the upholstery. And so, you know, here I am now 13 years later and still having fun with it.
There's a lot of warm and fuzzy American Motors and Ramblers and various cars here, but this one really, if anybody sees you, everybody has to really like you immediately when they see this car.
Well, I don't know if they like me, they like the car fine, but yeah, I get a lot of thumbs up and waves and smiles going down the road. I think it's kind of a real typical California car because it's, you know, aqua is the color, and it just makes people think of the beach or, you know, just cruising, and people would like to be me sometimes. So.
With the current gas situation, this must be a pretty good car to own.
It gets about 15 to 20 miles a gallon, not as good as you might think. It's a big 6-cylinder, and you know, I don't drive it every day, so.
If somebody's entering into the old car hobby and they're interested in an AMC product, what kind of advice would you give them?
Oh boy, get in a club, because that's where you're going to find your parts. The junkyards pretty much don't have the cars anymore. When I got this 13 years ago, I could find lots and lots of things, and did for years. But now it's like you have to be in a club to find the rare stuff and the weird stuff and whatnot. And get something that you're going to like and stick with. My wife limits me to one car at a time, so that helps. Yeah, because if you're only working on one car, that car gets better and better, and there's not like other cars kind of, oh, I'm going to do this weekend on that car. So,
well, you're lucky to have a wife that supports having a car of this vintage.
Well, the car came before she did. You know, we were dating when I bought it, so.
And she probably just fell for you because you owned a beautiful convertible.
Well, the convertible. She likes it. We have fun. Yeah.
All right, David, thank you very much for being on the Vintage Vehicle Show. This is a beautiful car.
Oh, thanks a lot.
David, thank you very much for the use of your 1965 Rambler American. This is a beautiful car. And thank you for watching the Vintage Vehicle Show. Tune in again, and we'll see you then. So, David, Seattle's up here and to the right.
Can't miss it.
All right, thanks.